I'm so excited to hear your story. She informed me right before the meeting that she had met me before, and of all places, in the ladies' room at the state convention. So it's good to see you again, Casey, and I'm so looking forward to you telling us about your experience, strength, and hope. So take it away, girl. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
My name is Casey. I am an alcoholic. I am a grateful alcoholic, and I consider myself a recovered alcoholic. And that is because God has removed the obsession from me. As I stand today, I do not have the mental obsession. I am happy, joyous, and free to go anywhere I want. And I have nothing to thank except for the program of the AA to get me there. Extremely grateful to be an alcoholic. I remember my very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was an in-person meeting, and I walked in there and I was so full of fear. And I remember sitting as far away as I could, in the furthest back I could, and sitting up against the wall and just pressing my back into it because I wanted so bad to melt into that wall. Like there was no way I wanted y'all to see me. I did not want to speak. That's the one thing that I knew, is that I would never speak at one of these meetings. Like, you guys were just volunteering all this information and I couldn't even catch my breath. I was so scared. I was so full of fear. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous to get a sheet signed. I was homeless before I went into treatment. Didn't really care to be homeless again. So I decided to just comply with the rules to sober living, and that was to come to meetings, get the sheet signed. My interest was piqued with AA sitting in treatment because I looked at that big poster with all those steps and I was like, maybe this is a solution. And then you guys started talking about how it's a spiritual solution, and I'm like, nah, never mind. Just kidding. Because the one thing I knew going into treatment is that I needed to find a real world solution to not feel like I was feeling, because the alcohol wasn't working, self-medicating wasn't working, and all I wanted to do more than anything was die. Because the situations and my rock bottom had taken away my solution, and that was alcohol. It would make me feel better, however temporary. Now, the first time that I spoke, it's really important for me to try to adhere to the rules of this program or the traditions of this program. So I was really struggling with the primary purpose tradition. Really wanted to adhere to that, and especially when speaking to, the group at large. So I sought advice from a friend, and I said, yes, alcohol is a part of my story, but then there's outside issues, and I really want to adhere to the primary purpose, and I really want to be helpful. And my friend gave me great advice to how I could identify with you guys. And he said, look back on your drinking career, look back to the times that you drank, and can you honestly answer that you drank alcoholically? And I did. Growing up, I had this absolute aversion to outside issues because my mother is an addict. So I always thought that I would be better than that and not use any kind of drugs. But drinking was a different story. My grandmother was an alcoholic. And so when my mother started on her addiction, my grandmother just quit. And when I tell you she was a real alcoholic, she was like a gallon of vodka in the bottom of the sink, underneath the sink. And she always kept 2 pitchers of orange juice, one for us and one for her screwdrivers. So she was not playing around. But my grandmother, which is the only kind of sobriety that I'd ever known, she just quit. She just quit out of nowhere. Daily drinker to never touched it again in her life, started taking care of us. And I always thought that that's how you did it. That's how you conquered something, is you just quit, like my grandmother did. So when my drinking career got really amped up, I kind of just gave into it. Like the whole cease fighting thing had a different meaning to me in my alcoholism. I just ceased fighting the fact that I could ever just quit. Looking back on it with new glasses, like I have now, my grandmother spent her entire life just completely, like, the definition of dry drunk. She was always bothered. She was always disturbed. She was always irritable. She cried just about every single day. She had no ability to overcome any kind of conflict that came her way. Bless her. Bless my grandmother. Another good way that I like to identify as an alcoholic is through We Agnostics. The Bedevilments are a huge, they helped me get over the fact that I'm different than you guys, right? I come in and I'm looking for all the differences between you and I, and listening to your story just so I can figure out a reason to not have to work these steps. Oh, sorry, guys, I was on the wrong page. I was gonna read them out for our friends. Okay. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. And that is me. Unfortunately, that is not me whenever you add alcohol. That is me when you take away the alcohol. That is how I know I belong here. That is... I am just maladjusted to life on my own. So coming into AA, I decided that I was going to get my sheets on. I was going to just do what I needed to do to have a roof over my head, because the streets ain't it. I had to get a job. I next had to get a job. And following the rules of my house, I had to work with a sponsor. So I was around on step 3, and my first job was a place called Ability Works. And I got that job because Voc Rehab paid my first month of sober living. So I was kind of beholden to go to them. And I'm sitting there, and what I'm doing on a daily basis is just putting on knobs of mailbox doors, like one after another. And Ability Works, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it is for people with disabilities. I had a lot of coworkers that were autistic and had other kind of severe disabilities, and I'm there, and my only disability is that I just can't get it together, and that I'm maladjusted to life. So in my head, I feel that this is ridiculous. I cannot believe that my life has come to the point to where I'm sitting there and I'm putting on mailbox doors. Like, there's got to be something better I can do than this. And that was kind of my first experience with deciding to seek what God's will is. Speaking to my sponsor, and I kind of had a moment in my prayer in my morning prayers that I'm going to do what God needs me to do for as long as he needs me to do it. Don't know where that came from. That must have been I feel like that was the very first time I actually had that God direction, that good orderly direction that we talk about. From there, I just threw myself into service work, mainly because I didn't have anything else to do. Like, my family's not talking to me. My kids are not answering the phone. Everybody's just sitting on pins and needles waiting for me to mess this up. Like, I'd mess up everything else, right? So I really tried to, I tried to throw myself into service work. And then I kind of got addicted to the service work. I really love helping other people. I don't love helping other people because I'm a good person. I love helping other people because I see that the more I pour out of myself, the more God takes care of me. Like, we all love the 9th step promises, but the 3rd step promises are really, really underrated. I have those. This is on page 63 of how it works. When we sincerely took such a position, all sort of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed. If we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, We became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, the hereafter. We were reborn. So that tells me simply what I try to live by today. If I take care of other people, God's going to take care of me. And he very much has. He very much has. My sobriety has taken me to places that I never thought possible. I know that we all say that, but it really rings true whenever you see these promises start coming true. But every new place that God has taken me to has required some kind of work from me. Whether it is learning to get out of my own way, whether it is learning to do what I don't want to do, whether it is fear. Fear was a big part of my life, especially when I came in here. My bottom was pretty traumatic, and it was pretty low. And I came into AA completely full of fear. I mean, to the point to where if you spoke to me, I would probably have a panic attack. It had a grip on me. So then when we got to the fear inventory, my sponsor and I, she's like, we're going to inventory your fear, and then you're going to ask God to remove it. And I was like, well, cool. You know, like, no more fear. Talk to me more about it. In my experience, I have never one time asked God to remove fear, and he's removed it. But every single time, my higher power has given me the strength and the power to push past the fear. When the fear comes up, when life starts lifing as it does, I realize now that there are things that I cannot control. I am powerless. I'm powerless over the situations that come at me. I am powerless over how you guys perceive me. I'm powerless over how you guys interact and how you guys treat me. What I can control, and so what I try to focus on, is the way that I walk through fear and the way that I walk through conflict. Because Casey wants to lash out, and Casey wants to let fear take control, and then, just not sign on to the grace group meeting because I'm so full of fear. When it's just my ego. It is just my ego. My ego tells me that I want to say something magical, and I want you guys to just sit there and think about me for 2 or 3 hours after it's over, and wake up the next morning and say, I got to find that girl on Facebook, because what she shared was so profound. And that's my ego. But my program tells me that I'm blessed to be useful today. I am blessed to be asked, because there was a time where I was useless. I was useful to nobody. And I really didn't care. All of those bedevilments really didn't bother me in my active alcoholism. It's whenever I tried to get sober that those things were really kind of blatantly obvious. And I was like, my life has been wasted. Like, what kind of use have I been of anybody? God has made me uniquely useful in a lot of different ways. And it is coming from being available. It is coming from being willing to do what I'm asked, saying yes instead of saying no, saying yes when I really want to say no. It would be easier and feel a lot safer to say no, because then you guys wouldn't see me. And I wouldn't have to be vulnerable. I could stay in my fear. I could stay in that back seat of the first meeting that I ever went to, and I could just disappear into oblivion. But usefulness has its own, you have got to excuse my cats, guys, sorry. I was at a meeting the other night. My sobriety date is January 25th, 2021. So I actually just celebrated 4 years of sobriety. The beautiful part of that is not, the miracle of it in my head is that I have gone 4 years without drugs or alcohol. But the real story here is that I've gone 4 complete and total years with not needing to change the way that I feel, to learning to be okay, learning to be a good friend, being a good employee and being a good actor and not being the director. I was at the meeting, the same meeting that I got my chip at. There was this young guy, super young, and I'm gonna feel super old when I say this. I think he was like the age of my son. I think this might be the first time I've ever said that, but super young guy, just coming in, and he had a lot of questions. And one of those questions one of the questions was, how do you find faith and how do you find hope? And I've been thinking about that since Saturday, and I didn't have any faith. I had no faith when I came in, but luckily, that's why they keep telling us to keep coming back, because I kept coming back, and the faith that I could find is that the people sharing were telling my story. They were describing the bedevilments, they were describing the struggle, they were describing the hopelessness, but they were laughing, and they had a car, which I know it's not material things, but at that point, when you don't have a car and you barely have a place to live, that's something to be admired. So I borrowed my group's faith. I had no faith in any kind of higher power. Look, guys, I grew up in church. I kind of skipped the agnostics for the first 8 months, because I knew about God. I grew up in church. I sat in those pews every day of my life. My grandma would have us sitting there, and I was dying every single day. I would sit here and I would mimic the things that they were doing, and I would talk the talk, and I learned real well, and I felt none of it. I felt emptiness. I felt emptiness before alcohol even entered my life. I feel like these bedevilments were present my entire life. It's just that, alcohol made life livable for a while until it didn't. Another thing that I was thinking about the faith and the hope is, thank God that I don't need faith and hope for this program to work. I don't need those. My big book tells me that I need 3 things: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I need to get honest with myself, with God, and with the people around me. I need to be open-minded. I don't have to have faith in that God is going to cure me of my alcoholism. I just need to be open-minded to the fact that maybe it could happen. So listening to the stories, and because you guys come to these meetings, and because you guys share so openly about relapses and coming back in to pick up a chip after a relapse after 12 years of sobriety, that stuff, that gave me the belief to go on. And willingness. Willingness is something that I still struggle with today. I need to be willing to just do it anyways. And that's kind of what I fall back on whenever I don't feel like it, whenever I get up and I don't really, I'm exhausted and I don't really want to meet with a sponsee because I'm tired and work was crazy and I got yelled at by my boss, and all I want to do is just text them and say, can we please do this another day? No, I'm going to be willing to put myself out there. And 10 times out of 10, I'm always getting more out of it than my sponsees. I have a wonderful sponsor that I don't call enough because I never want to bother her. And then I have sponsees that I wish would call me more because I want to talk to them more. But they probably feel the same way about me. That young man in that meeting on Saturday, he also asked, let me see, how did he word it? He said, whenever you come, I don't know, I've been using and I've been drinking for so long, I don't know who I am anymore. He said, how do I find out who I am? And that got me thinking too, is I didn't need to find out who I am. It didn't matter who I was whenever I walked in here, because today I'm a totally different person. That Casey that was homeless, that could not manage her own life, that had really just drove every relationship and every person that cared about me into the ground. The me that would have a job and be doing really well and then would impulsively quit or not show up, not show up for 3 days at a time and just blow her whole life to the ground. Who cares who that Casey is? I know who that Casey was, and I didn't like her, which is why I drank. Okay. So it doesn't really matter who we are whenever we come in here. What matters is that I open myself up to God, and I open myself up to the program of AA and working the steps and being willing to do the steps so that I can let God change me. Because what do I need? I need a spiritual awakening, because whoever the Casey was that walked in was not going to be able to make it. I would not be alive today if I had not found a real personal spiritual connection with a power greater than myself. Had no idea that my real life solution that I was looking for was actually a spiritual solution. And thank God, and thank my higher power, and thank you guys for being able to share with me so much of your story. So in my story, like I said, there are outside issues that I won't go into. I don't feel like I need to go in the nitty gritty. Like when I first was the first time I told my story, the first few times I would make an outline with Roman numerals, and I would make sure I wanted to hit this and I wanted to say this just right. And I'm probably lagging from lack of preparation. But I feel it's more important to touch on the ways that the program has enhanced and improved my life and really changed my life. My spiritual awakening was very much the garden variety. It came in little moments where I would be driving down the road and I would realize I have not had the urge to use or drink in 6 months. Like, I don't even want it. It's been removed. The 10-step promises, I'm completely in a place of neutrality. And that would just be mind blowing to me. Or when something would happen that used to be a mountain for me, and it would drive me to bed for days of pulling the cover over my head, and refusing to face conflict. Today I face that. It's not always fun, but again, I have been given the strength and the power to do these hard things. These are not, and this is not who I was. I know who I was before. With my grandmother, and with my mother, I've pretty much, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a little town called Picayune. There's not really much recovery modeled there. It's kind of like a lot of people are just trying to self-medicate and just try to get themselves through. Today, what's really important to me is step 12. Now, step 12 and step 1 are both, for me, the two steps that I notice have kind of two parts to them. So in step 1, I realize I'm powerless over alcohol, and my life is unmanageable. For me, I'm powerless over alcohol, but my sober life is unmanageable. I am maladjusted to life. I cannot manage my own life. I need a higher power to come in here and manage it. And then the 12th step. The 12th step is that having had this spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carried our message to other alcoholics, and we practice these principles in all our affairs. So the 12th step is very important to me. I try to tell people, do not, and this might be judgmental of me, but I cannot claim to have worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous if I am not willing to sponsor. That is the bread and butter of our program. That is literally the bright spot of our lives. Whenever I start getting low on sponsees, or I have sponsees that start getting up to step 9 or step 10, I need to go fishing. I need to be actively sharing. I need to be actively looking for girls that want to work and that want to do the work. Because if you leave it to me, I'm not going to open this book on my own. I'm not going to open this book unless I have a reason to open this book, and that is to go through it with someone else and have the privilege of sharing with with women what was so freely given to me. Like I said, I love it. And I don't love it because I'm a good person. I love it because the benefit I get out of it is tenfold what a fourth step does for me. It is tenfold what that garden variety spiritual awakening is. Going through it and really having a front row seat to girls, the light bulb coming on, and you see them changing, and it doesn't, I mean, it matters that they get their kids back and that they get a good job and that they're able to move out of cyber living. Those things do matter for women like me who have never been able to do that. Women like me who have never been self-sufficient, who have always been dependent on someone, the kindness of someone else, to be given things and then taken away, but thinking that you can never do it on yourself. That is important to women like me. But I think where we miss out on it is when we really try to downplay the usefulness that we now have. I would love to sit here and tell you guys that I'm a master of the 11th step. I have a sponsor who is a master of the 11th step, that prayer and meditation. I can't sit still for more than 3 or 4 minutes. But I do find ways to make it my own. I do find ways to connect with my higher power. At one point, my careers have taken the craziest have gone to the craziest places. Like, they have run the spectrum. Another job that I had a couple of years ago was as a pathology courier. So basically I would drive around with dead body parts in my car all day long. I would go from place to place, drop them off, pick them up. And yeah, like all the body parts, just a cooler full of them. But it was exactly what I needed at that time, because I would start work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody to talk to when you're driving an hour and a half between Hattiesburg and Jackson. And it's nobody but me and the sunrise. And the way that I was driving was directly in the sunrise. And it kind of forced me to have that spiritual time with God. I would just sit there and I would turn on some low level worship music, or sometimes I would just drive in complete silence and just let my mind kind of wander. I was still paying attention to the road, of course, but I would let my mind wander, and whatever I would think of, whatever would come to my mind, that was something I would examine. I would examine it. I would talk out loud. I would think about it, but I would really try to figure out why is this coming to me? It is a wonderful way. I highly recommend. And even now, like today, I drove all the way to Baton Rouge from Hattiesburg, which is about 2.5 hours, for like a 45-minute meeting. And I drove back. And about halfway back, I just turned everything off and just listened and asked God to give me the right words. Let me say something helpful, and let me get through it without my cats knocking my laptop off of my table. About 2 years ago, I received a call from a friend. I did a lot of work. I was at a sober living establishment called Oxford House. And again, because I had nothing else going on in my life, I kind of threw myself into service work. And that's where I really fell in love with it. Even before I really started getting sponsees and getting into the work with them, I was helping out with Oxford House. A couple of years ago, I got a call from just a random person that I'd never met him in person, but I talked to him a couple times on the phone, and he was offering me a job. And this job did not sound like anything that was a real job. And then when he told me the salary, I'm like, yeah, you're pulling my leg, sir. I currently work for treatment centers, and so I get to go and speak to people at their lowest, share a little bit of my story with them when appropriate, and really help get them to treatment. Now, for me, I'm like, cool. Well, I'm going to stay sober forever because I work for a treatment center now. Very good friend of mine, the same one that helped me identify as an alcoholic, And he still to this day, like a year later, makes sure to check me and let me know, I don't, this is not your job. I mean, this is not your service work. You can't check the box for service work. I do this because I'm good at it, because I fell in love with it. I'm uniquely qualified to be, just to be able to model recovery for them, not to model AA, but to model recovery for them, because I have found a solution. So it doesn't matter the kind of work that I do. It matters that I am working with women. It matters that I am trying to share my story. It matters that I am showing up whenever everything else is telling me not to. I know that I'm supposed to talk for longer, but that's really all I got, guys.